for creativity. And yet, in the same sculpture, the Yoruba may not only permit but accept beautiful, wide range of modes of artistic representation, as is evident in this saying. Bí a ṣakẹ́kẹ́, àjò ẹwà là ń ṣe. Bí a bàbàjà, àjò ẹwà là ń ṣe. Bí a fẹ̀rẹ̀kẹ́ sílẹ̀ lọ́bọ̀rọ̀, àjò ẹwà náà là ń ṣe. If we have, you see, the Yoruba have facial markings. You see, there's one called keke. If we have keke facial mark, it is for the sake of beauty, of ewa. If we have abaja, another type of mark, it is also for the sake of beauty. And if you leave your face totally unmarked, it is also for the sake of beauty. So this gives you a whole range of things to work with. Now, whereas many scholars who have been a little bit myopic have held the erroneous notion that traditional African art or Yoruba art are static, unchanging, because we would like to say, oh, this one is what represents Africa. It is totally untrue. I think people think, oh, they are repetitive. Imojumara contradicts such assumptions, since it contains a germ. They contain germs of change, initiative, and creativity that give dynamism to Yoruba art. And the range of differing representations and artistic interpretations of Eshu in Africa and the New World. Eshu is, we call it a trickster god, but it's not really. I'll tell you what Eshu is in a second, but not now. It speaks to the importance of Imojumora. Now, and before I go to Eshu, I wanted to know that the Ifa divination text, which is like the powerhouse, intellectual powerhouse of Yoruba culture, says something very interesting. Today's divination may not be valid tomorrow, that is in the future. That is the reason Babalawo, Ifa diviners or divination priests must divine every 5 days. That is once in each 4-day week. The Yoruba have a 4-day week, not the 7-day week. So, in other words, to tell you that there's a constant revision, something going on all the time, is what I want to lay the foundation for what actually has taken place in the New World. And so you have this, for example, this is Agerifa, which is a divination bowl to hold divination equipment. And it's very interesting. This one is from Owo, dates to about the 16th, 17th century. And look at what happens in the 20th century. A close-up, this is a different thing. So there, it's fulfilling the same function. Here you find a colonial officer pouring a gin into a cup, and of course, on the lid there, you can see the bowler hat, which the colonialist is wearing, and you can see his beard, looks quite, you can see everything is different. Things are changing all the time, and there's nothing strange about being able to adapt to situations. So the Yoruba verse, this Yoruba work, and the verse I've just given you, emphasizes an ongoing process rather than a conclusion. It is always, there's something always going on. Now, like scientists whose propositions and hypotheses, though based on hard facts, can change with developments, similarly, Ifa priests, Babalawo, revise their prognosis frequently and update them for accuracy. This is also true for Yoruba artists who adopt new materials and Asha, new styles in their ever-changing society. That is the reason that they claim, I've heard Yoruba artists say that their work is always contemporary. In other words, they do not look at their work as being just, they say, my work is always contemporary, a credit that is really given them by scholars. Now, the oriki paradigm, which I mean, oriki is they call it pre-citation. It's actually citation poetry, which can be, it can flatter, it can also indict, it can say all sorts of negative things, enables us to appreciate the Yoruba concept of art that is not bound by or limited by time and space. This is what a scholar, Olabi Yai, calls akigidan, which means infinitely generative characterization. Through this dynamic framework, we can better understand the ever-changing nature of artistic expression in Yoruba society and the diaspora. Now, always adapting through aesthetic notion of imojumora to current circumstances and therefore even always contemporary. Now, I will show you something else. You will see. That's a close-up. Now, I'll show you this interesting work here. The work on your left is Ogo Eshu. That is the Eshu's devotees use it during the ritual, during their festivals. They hang it on their garb, and it distinguishes them as as priests of Eshu. On the right is a new rendition of Eshu. Ha! Can you see that? This one is from this one on the right is by Chris Vondrashek from Seattle, Washington. Chris Vondrashek is one example of an artist working in the diaspora and reinterpreting Eshu concept. Vondrashek lives in Seattle, Washington, demonstrates an aspect of creativity which evokes the aesthetic canon of Imojumora. His sculptural conceptualization of Eshu recalls the verbal and visual allusions of Eshu, and especially the Ogo Eshu on the left, the Eshu dance wand. In Vondrashek's Eshu, the projection of the head looks more like a tuft of hair than a phallus. The Coca-Cola and Sprite bottles, which hang on the Eshu's figure, reference is Ashe, the power to make something happen. It's also his wealth, the result of his earned commissions, accrued commissions from delivering offerings and sacrifices for the Orisha and humans. Coca-Cola bottles with their characteristically dark-colored drink and secret ingredients are a powerful reminder of Adoiran, medicinal gourds, whose contents are not always revealed to the general public. The same thing happens. Nobody knew what was in Coca-Cola for a long time. But it is cola nut that is in it. And the thing about it is Coca-Cola bottles, of course, again, I'm going to show you, there's a clarinet. You can see the clarinet on these other ones here, the clarinet on the right, calls attention to Eshu as a Daomo, the supranormal and unusual child who fails to conform to the Yoruba norm that forbids the playing of flutes and other types of wind instruments at noonday. The black tuxedo pants with red stripe recall Eshu's favorite cap, the one that apocryphally causes two close friends to start quarreling but Eshu paradoxically becomes the indispensable arbiter in the resolution of their differences. Now, let me just, the issue, you can see there's the issue on the right actually shows you there's a lance there, there's a flute, there's a flute here, you can see the flute being played there, and you can see, you know, everything, and you can see the colors too. The colors of the hat, the dark indigo blue and red. Sort of, I'm trying to say how diaspora and Africans now readjust. There's nothing, it's not, they don't have to have the exact things, just like you don't have to have the exact apple. What you remember of the apple is what you create. There's also what is interesting about a discussion of Iwa, which I like to, and its apparently different manifestations in Africa and the New World and the diaspora, ought to include its equally arresting images as Eshuoja of the marketplace, Eshuorita of the forked roads, Eshuoninyagi of the laterite bound, Eshuonaude of the courtyard, Eshuobasi in Ifa, Eshuodara, Eshuonibode, the threshold and gatekeeper, and many more. As Eshuelegbara, he is one and many things at the same time. From his name, Eshu, which is derived by adding the agentive I, to the predicate shu, that's to need, to bring together. The Yoruba are well aware that everybody, in every situation, needs Eshu to bring them together. That's why you have these disparate things. Now, let's look at this one. This is Eshu in LA, Silver Lake in LA. Here, Eshu has been truncated. It's been distilled just to coconut and cowrie for the eyeballs. But you will find this near the door to a few restaurants, you know, when you go to California. You don't know what it is. It is Eshu. It is Eshu that, you know, belongs to inside and the outside of our universes. So you can see here that its relevance to Yoruba aesthetics is that it provides us with a way to better understand and appreciate Imojumora. But more importantly, Eshu renders our conventional, traditional definitions of gender, time, and space insignificant. We really don't. In the 19th century Eshu, let's see if I can get it back to you again. The 19th century, the one on the left, the gender of Eshu seems difficult to determine from the top of his hair, which could be read both as a penis or just a woman's long hair. In Vondrashek's Eshu, executed in Seattle, there are two faces, one looking forward and the other backwards. Janus faced, if you want to put it that way. Eshu belongs to the past, the present, and the future, all at the same time. In both sculptures, they are true to the character, what we call Iwa of Eshu. And unrelated, opposite materials are brought together. Bottle tops, Coca-Cola, Sprite bottles, clarinet, fabric, wood, all of it make up Eshu's, make Vondrashek's Eshu on the right. This is matched by an equally arresting range of disparate materials, cowrie shells, you can see on the left, you have cowrie shells, gourds, leather, fabric, wood in the Ogo Eshu on the left. Eshu is praised in its verbal oriki as both huge and small, an attribute that seems to justify aesthetically Vondrashek's 6.5-foot sculpture. That's one on the right, 6.5-foot sculpture of Eshu, and 18.5 inches of Ogo Eshu in Yoruba land. Do you get what I'm saying? So this is, and not only that, it is also in this vein that we can make sense of Vondrashek's Eshu, which weighs 250 pounds, and its counterpart only 2 pounds. So, Eshu propagates himself in Yoruba land and the New World. Both of them are right, they are correct, they are resting, they are powerful, they are also effective. And Eshu propagates himself in Yoruba land and in Seattle, Washington, thus establishing himself firmly as the Orisha whose Iwa, whose presence, whose influence is needed both in Africa and in the New World. So we've used Eshu sculpture here to illustrate the aesthetic notion of Imojumora, ability to adapt and change without being formally told to do so, and to demonstrate that critics and audiences will continue to encounter, even as you look at the exhibition that is up now, you continue to encounter a wider and wider range of new forms, of new motifs of the same deity, in this case Eshu. For those in Yoruba art scholarship or African art scholarship, the situation is very challenging and calls for their individual demonstrations of Imojumora to be able to understand and appreciate Yoruba artistic creativity. The black tuxedo pants with red, look at it again, with red stripe, recalls Eshu's favorite cap, which I just showed you. The one that causes two friends to start quarreling. I saw two friends, they are farm, one on this side, one on the other side. Eshu walks right between them, and the guy here sees the red, the guy sees the blue, and they've been very good friends maybe for 50 years. And when Eshu passes, after Eshu was passed, they started discussing Eshu. Did you see that guy who wore the red hat? I said, yeah. Then I said, no, it was, no, it was black. It was, no. You say, no, you've never lied to me before. This guy is black. No, this one is blue. This one is black. This one is blue. This one is black. And then before long, they started fighting. It's very interesting that Eshu is the same person, but it provokes. It's a provocative deity, a deity that causes you to think again. That is the name Eshu, E and Shu. E is a nominalization process of the Yoruba language, which turns a verb into a noun. Shu means to bring together. And E, Shu, means that which brings together. Anyway, that's enough of some linguistics there. But this is very interesting for you to understand what we are trying to do. Now, so a discussion of Eshu's Iwa and the apparently different manifestation in Africa and the diaspora ought to include its equally arresting, they're all arresting images as Eshu Oja, marketplace, Eshu Orita, or the folk roads, Eshu Oniyangi, the laterite, Eshu Onande, Eshu Obasi, Eshu Odara, Eshu Onibodi, Eshu. Oh, there's so many issues, So we do have that This is a very, so its relevance to Yoruba aesthetics, however, is that it provides us with a way to better understand and appreciate Imojumora. But more importantly, Eshu renders, as I said, our traditional notions of gender, of time and space irrelevant. In the 19th century Ogo Eshu from Yoruba land, of course, it's difficult, as I said, for us to know whether this is, whether it's long hair, or it is a tuft, or it is, in fact, the discussion is heated among scholars who believe, who swear that the one on the left is a man's genital. But I think we have to think harder. In another work I've done, which I'm not discussing here on Oshun, I think I've argued successfully that it is the tuft of the hair of Eshu, because Eshu was the bridge between Oshun and the other 16 male divinities who descended from the other world to this world. Without Eshu, now, and what happened was that Oshun gave birth to only one child without the help of a male partner. And the name of that child is Osetura, which is another name for Eshu. So it's like a bridge between the male and female genders. It's a very interesting discussion. If you have nothing else to do, I would recommend that you read that article. It's a chapter actually in a book which might help. Eshu belongs to everywhere. Eshu is, Eshu is everywhere. So it is not that, and Eshu is the one that causes you to think twice. And one of the oriki, the citation poetry for Eshu, says Eshu turns right into wrong. This is the way you activate Eshu. Eshu turns right into wrong, turns wrong into right. When he's angry, he hits a stone until it bleeds. When he's angry, he sits on the skin of an ant. When he's angry, he weeps tears of blood. Eshu slept in the house, but the house was too small for him. Eshu slept in the veranda was too small for him. Eshu slept in a nut. At last he could stretch himself. Eshu walked through the groundnut farm. The tuft of his hair was just visible. If it had not been for his huge size, he would not be visible at all. Lying down, his head hits the roof. Standing up, he cannot look into the cooking pot. He throws a stone today and kills the bird yesterday. Is everybody with me? He throws a stone today and he kills the bird yesterday. We're talking of a quintessential postmodernist character. This is so interesting when we're looking at. So we have used Eshu here to illustrate the aesthetic notion of Imojumora, the ability to change, and to demonstrate that critics will continue. We're going to start seeing lots and lots of things. In my own research, which spans over 4 decades, maybe going to 5 now, I have had occasion to address some important aesthetic methodological issues that can be summarized. It's also related to this, which can be summarized as Ashe. Okay, but in that, in the first, I gave this lecture, not today, but I gave the lecture when I finished that paper. I gave it at the British Museum, and I called it what follows 6 is more than 7. Understanding African art. What is so interesting about that is the issue got into that whole thing because I was sent the poster to vet before they put it out. And somehow it read, I don't know how it changed. It said, what follows sex? It's more than 7. I never said sex, I said 6, S-I-X. So they redid the poster finally, but if it was going to bring in a lot of people, you can leave it. I mean, maybe I'll correct it. When the audience are all seated, I'll just say, in actual fact, it is 6, not sex. I'm sure a few people, maybe 3/4 of the audience will walk away and say, well, we were looking for something which follows sex, but it is not. Anyway, this proverb suggests that we look beyond what is simply culturally observed. We look beyond what we see on the surface in order to understand Yoruba and Yoruba diasporic art. In other words, we should not be content with only a formalistic analysis of Yoruba art, but endeavor to understand it as the expression of the thought and belief system that produced it, lest we unwittingly remove the African from African art. This is extremely important because, even though trained as a straitjacket art historian and doing, taught both Western art and non-Western art, I see that this, to understand a little bit, to go a little bit deeper into African art or African diasporic art, you've got to go into the thought system. And if you don't, you might be unwittingly removing that African from African art. And so, among the Yoruba, among the Yoruba, the sculpture you are seeing now, which is Shango sculpture, it's a shrine. Ritual objects and food and everything and other sacrificial arrangements, the architectural space, the design, the colors, the smells, and when they occur are essential components of the oriki, or the citation attributive poetry, that may praise or even be critical of the subject for which the visual material is a vector. Oriki, through oriki, because all of these are seen as oriki. You see, painting, sculpture, music, dance, smell, all of this are all subsumed under the term oriki. Ashe, it's when all these are together that Ashe can be activated to evoke the power and the presence of the Orisha Shango, the god of lightning and thunder, which has survived in the New World. Through oriki, Ashe can be activated to evoke the power and presence of Orisha, humans, animals, virtually everything that exists. This Shango shrine, photographed by Henry Drewell in 1978, is a typical example. The balanced, sophisticated distribution of deep blues, rich brick reds, pale and dazzling kaolin whites, pinks and lemon yellows colors against a quiet background of neutral but warm grays in this shrine are no more than a visual feast for many Western art historians. But for Shango devotees and priests, an affective aesthetic experience is only just beginning. And this is very important. This truly arresting visual experience is empowered by verbal and verbal and performed oriki. For example, when masquerades, which have survived in Puerto Rico, it survived in Bahia, it survived in Rio, it survived in Cuba, it survived, I was in Trinidad, it survived there. When in their colorful, impressive costume, when people respond, when the devotees respond, they respond to gestures also, to the music, to the dance, to the song, to the feast, to smell, to performance. They are essential, because this essentially transform an already charged atmosphere, raising it to the level of a shared experience beyond the ordinary, an event that has been recorded by many artists. Look at this, for example. What you see there, you can't now start looking at the fabric thread by thread. You're looking at an experience. You're capturing an experience, something that is a little bit, this is not, in fact, it reminds me a little bit of, is it Duchamp? Going down the stairs, is it? Marcel Duchamp? Yeah. Now, this is almost like, that's the closest you can find. But in this way, we're experiencing the real thing, not just painted. We're experiencing the smell, we're experiencing the movement, we're experiencing the movement, you're experiencing the sound, you're experiencing everything, the smell, all together. This is what creates that special atmosphere. You're raising it to the level of a shared experience. Now, this scenario is not exactly familiar to traditional Western aesthetic sensibilities. And therefore, they do create enormously complex challenges for the researcher trying to understand this what I call the religio-aesthetic dimension of African art. The simultaneous interplay of all these forms of oriki does not lend itself to easy description, translation, or even analysis, especially if we decide to rely solely on the terminologies and theoretical constructs of Western academic disciplines, art history in particular. The methodological challenges, however, do create enormous opportunities to seek new and contextually relevant theoretical alternatives based on African concepts like Ashe and of course, we're reminded of what William Fagg, one of the pioneers of African art, his interest in the dimension of soul, or energy, or life force, which questions the adequacy of essentially formalist, self-referential, Western modernist approaches to African art. Though not specifically mentioned as Ashe by Fagg, we are now in a position to know that the Yoruba and their descendants in the New World, the closest concept to what Fagg was describing in his essay is Ashe, an enigmatic and performative motive force in Yoruba art and culture. We shall therefore consider that compelling aesthetic presence, which results from the combination of artistic components which we call oriki, especially as they evoke Ashe in the theme or subject. The concept of Ashe has intrigued a lot of scholars, of Yoruba scholars, both in Africa and the African diaspora, still retaining more or less its original Yoruba meaning among Africans and people of African descent. Ashe remains it remains foundational for religio-aesthetic and artistic discourse in Brazil, the Caribbean, and the United States. It will not be possible, I'm not going to go into that now, to delve into all the multifarious and important manifestations, but suffice it to say that the phenomenon of Ashe and its use has gone far beyond Yoruba land and is fast becoming a Yoruba and Yoruba diasporic term for power in secular and sacred contexts. The form of ancient Dahomey, now Republic of Benin, for example, developed two different and related concepts of Ashe. She, referring to divine and metaphysical aspect of Ashe, and Ache, pronounced that way, representing the social and political dimensions. Similarly, Ashe is used in Brazil to define the candomblé, houses of worship, otherwise known as Ile Ashe, A-X-E. The candomblé is Ile Ashe. Research confirms in Cuba that the sacred world of Santeria is motivated by Ashe. And in the United States, African American culture, the Ashe concept is more implicit than explicit, palpably felt in churches, the Spirit, the Holy Ghost, or simply power, embodies an essentially Ashe-type phenomenon. Quite often, a church minister or person who manifests this spirit is highly regarded in the community and seen as one with leadership potential. In more secular contexts, in literary and oral traditions, such as signifying, playing the dozens, dissing, snapping, rapping, spitting, there are striking similarities in and perhaps even reverberations of the structure and affective aspect of Ashe in varying degrees. So from this general observation regarding the varied use of Ashe to describe sacred places, modes of worship, and frequently artworks, whether visual or performed in Africa and the New World, it is clear that the most important religio-aesthetic phenomenon to have survived transatlantic slavery, almost nearly intact, is Ashe. Indeed, a careful examination of Ashe, especially within the context of oriki, is necessary if we are to understand its transatlantic manifestations. Among the Yoruba, depending on the context, the word Ashe is variously translated and understood as power, as authority, as command, as scepter, as vital force in all living and non-living things, as a coming to pass, as an utterance, as a logos prophoricos. All these are together in the New World. To devotees of Orisha, however, the concept of Ashe is more practical. It's not theoretical, it's practical and immediate. Ashe inhabits and energizes the awe-inspiring space of Orisha, the altars, the ojuibo, the utensils, the objects, the offerings, even the air around them. Thus, the religious sculptural objects or artifacts, such as the Aruba, let me see if I can get that here. Okay, this is Shango in New Jersey among African Americans. This is Shango Shrine, but look at Shango in Cuba. So we're talking here of, let me go back to this. So all these utensils are re-energized. They are recharged, just like you recharge your cell phone. They are recharged with Ashe before undertaking any task. Ritual performances for Orisha are also occasions for priests to recharge their Ashe. Thus, it is not unusual for Shango priests at their festivals to respond inspiringly to their Orisha's highly affective music and oriki. They wield their oshe, their dance wand, and perform the highly energetic dance and magical feats which are characteristically to invoke the Ashe. Now, so we can see here, you can see the double-headed axe here. It's now acted up in the form of drapery. You can see the bata drum, you can see the white and the red. These are the colors of Shango. Everything in double is all Shango. The one who fathered twins as well. So all of these are just we cannot, we can't overlook this when we're trying to understand what happens in the New World. The bata drum. Let me see. I think there's something else I want to show you. Oh, okay. This one is Oshe Shango being performed in Nigeria. And this one is a female figure with twin cells of thunderacts, Edunara, balanced upon her head as is an extraordinary image which seen in the hands of a devotee possessed by Orisha, and dancing to the piercing, crackling sounds, staccato rhythms of the bata drum, the possessed devotee, the Elegun Shango, will wave this Oshe Shango with violent and threatening gestures, and then in an instant draw it to himself or herself in a motion of quiet composure. The thunderbolts, like lightning, clearly convey the sudden, overwhelming, seemingly capricious power of Shango. So the monkeys are also seen as the children. They are another term for twins, because Shango was able to stop the twin infanticide among the Yoruba. As you probably know, most of you know, the Yoruba have the highest twinning rate in the world, 45.1 in 1,000 births. We're still trying to find out why. There are all kinds of... So there, Ashe pertains to... There's so many things about this Ashe. So Ashe pertains to the identification of you can see, this is Shango, this is a bowl in a Shango shrine, a woman, of course, kneeling down and carrying a bowl of ingredients, materials that are given to Shango. Now, Ashe pertains to the identification, activation, and the use of energy believed to reside in Orisha, humans, animals, plants, hills, and rivers. This Orisha Popo from Ogbomoso and Shankono shrine, which I showed you earlier. If you look at them, all these signs, everything, almost, if you look at them, every sign here is to activate. Everything here, the women are the artists who do this. They activate the shrine. In fact, it's not enough to see. You have to see them on the day of worship of this. They sing, they dance, there's food, there are all kinds of things that go with these designs you see here. So it is. I want to cut it short because I know I'm already overstaying. The thing about Ashe and Ikwe, I want to understand Ashe, how it works. We need to be familiar with the term Je, which means to answer, She, which means to come to pass, which means to summon, all of whose meanings illuminate the effectuation of power in Ashe and Ikwe. When Ashe is used to curse or harm a person, that's when you call it Ikwe. Consider the following verse. Òjò tí a pèpè lápàṣẹ, òjò tí a bóhùn lápèpè, wọ́n pàṣẹ wọ́n pèpè, ohùn ló wá kù. The day Ikwe was birthed, that's cursed, was the day that Ashe life force also came into existence. Likewise, Om, speech, was born on the day Ikwe was invoked. Ashe was asserted, Ikwe was summoned, but they both still need Om to activate them. So in other words, you can write Om, and you can write Ashe. If we don't perform it, It's nothing. If I remember when I was a little bit younger, some of my classmates in primary school will say to me, we write on the piece of paper, abusing my mother, say, your mother. And that usually starts a fight. You can't curse my mother. Now, but to start a fight, I have to tell that classmate of mine, say it with your mouth. Can you say it? What you've written down. He wrote it on a piece of paper, your mother. I'm not going to fight on that. I want him to say it, to come from his mouth. The moment he says it, I slap him. But I cannot do that without his uttering it. The utterance is a different thing from writing it down. Because that is the whole thing about the performed. And I wanted to, yeah, this is what I want. So this Godhead dates to about the 12th, 13th century. It's in terracotta. And this shows you the power of the word, the power, this ashe I'm talking about. If it is not voice, if it's not converted into speech, it is not active. It is only when it is spoken, when it is performed, that it becomes active. And it is known that I believe that this person being God was probably has committed an offense, maybe a crime, maybe murdered someone, maybe raped a person, maybe don't, and is about to be executed. And it is believed that if this criminal happens to say something at the point of execution, it will come to pass. So the best thing is to make sure that he or she does not utter a sound. I just want you to know this concept of action goes back. It's not a new thing. You can art historically, trace it back to about the 12th century. So, I will try and wrap up by saying that what we have seen, or what we will see in the exhibition, I suspect what is we're going to see is going to be, they're going to be works of art that will call for our ability to hear. Because these works speak, they do hear, which we call iluti, which you all have to possess iluti, which literally means good hearing. It determines whether a work of art is living or not. That is iluti. Briefly put, iluti is the foremost criterion in determining if a work of art fulfills its artistic intention, promptly and with precision. Black churches have, in the United States, have the saying, God is able. I don't know if you've heard it before. That is a kind of iluti-like thing. The iluti-like phenomenon is still very much alive in what has been generally labeled a call and response mode of worship. In West Africa, the Yoruba look for an orisha with iluti to worship, as evident in the saying, Eborato luti lambo, we worship and celebrate only deities who can respond when called upon. For a work of art to have the power to respond, the artist must have the insight into his or her subject. They should possess the inner eye, oju, by which they can discern the essential nature of the subject, and use the citation poetry, the oriki of the artistic subject. With oju, an artist may identify and employ all the right colors, the right designs, the combination of motifs, or say for Shango, for Batala, or Baloaye, and all these things. Or the costume for an ancestral masquerade, so as to imbue it with the proper identity and the ashe of the particular of a specific orisha. Without ashe, an attractive work of art may fail to make an appreciable religio-aesthetic impact on their audience. So, with these foregoing observations, I think they might be relevant to what you will see in the exhibition, the concept of change, because they provide us with a Yoruba-based rationale to consider new issues, new theoretical frameworks, artistic concepts. Will even force us to redefine our terminologies, or even reappraise the present manner of displaying African and African diasporic objects in museums and exhibition halls. Thank you. Sure.
So we have time for a couple of questions, and then there's actually a reception, I believe, awaiting us. So I'd like to open the floor. Anybody have any comments or questions for Professor Abiodun?
Yes.
So I have to preface this by saying I know this question, it comes from a very Western art historical perspective.
Yeah, sure. We're in the same boat.
Right.
We come in different ships.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm thinking about the 6.5-foot issue by the Seattle artist, and knowing that this is a distinction that doesn't exist with the Yoruba, but did he create it as a sacred object of worship or as an artwork to be displayed in the museum? And I'm thinking about that because the 6.5-foot tall figure is a lot to keep in your house and worship to. So,
well, I think Chris Bondrusek does not. I think he probably is in between, because it depends on the number of devotees that will come, but again, he's considering the monetary reward. He's now looking for a place for a museum to take it, and so that's the answer. It's not that, if you go to the market in Brazil, Bahia Market, there's an article on it by Doran Ross and somebody, Daniel Crowley. Some of these objects of worship are sold in the marketplaces. They're not, but we collect them as an art historian. I love to have them in the museum. Why not? But they're actually sold, so it's not, they're not, even though they're meant to enhance, but in the new world, they have a double purpose. They also bring in money. So why not? If the guy can do that. Actually, it's an artwork when you look at it. So it qualifies as an artwork, an art piece that deserves to be seen and studied and enjoyed. But for the worshiper, hey, it's something a little bit stronger. You go there, just like you go to a Catholic church. I look at it, I see the beautiful Mary and something, and some people go there and they're praying for forgiveness and so on. It's okay. I don't think there's any, I have no objection to that.
Any other questions?
Well,
yes, go ahead.
I'll add to that just a little, because in many ways you could compare some of this to the long tradition of pilgrimage art that exists in both the Western and even in the Buddhist tradition. Small devotional objects, which also had a market value, which were all produced by religious institutions in order to make some money, and which, when placed within the setting of a house, become an object of devotion.
Yeah.
But also can become, and have many times become objects of potentially some aesthetic value, depending on the person who collects them.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think, yes.
So to the flip side of that is when an art object like the one we're talking about is placed in a museum, and I don't know, some museums put offering bowls in front of sacred objects. So is it a question of Is the art object sacred, or is the art object an art object, or is the museum being transformed into a temple?
Right.
Interesting.
Does it
And
focus
that's
on the
why,
space rather than the object?
and this is the question I have, and this is why I ended by saying even the mode of displaying these works in museums will need to be we have to rethink the way we do them. It's not that one way is the way to do it, but we might constantly, actually I was on the board of the new Museum of Contemporary Art in New York, and there were some modern artists come from all over the world. Some artists want their work to be experienced, it becomes experiential. And some just don't want that. That's the prerogative of the artist. But there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there are so many ways of looking at this thing. But I see it as very challenging and a lot of work for us, and to find out those who are looking at it, those who are coming, want to, it's a very interesting world where there are so many possibilities. Yes?
You emphasize this constant revision, the creativity and possibility of openness, and I wonder if there's a sense of boundaries too.
Yes, that's why I came up with the Yoruba oriki that kìí ṣe pé etí kìí fẹ̀, kìí ṣe pé etí kìí gùn, ṣùgbọ́n ètò bá ti ṣèṣì rékọjá orí ó ti di ìhòòhò. In other words, it is not that the ears cannot be long, it is not that the ears cannot be wide, but when perchance the ears shoot past the head, they become that of the rabbit. In other words, there's a boundary. There's a boundary. In other words, if you're representing a human being and he's already becoming that of a rabbit, you say, this is not, there is a limit to it.
And is that limit ever construed as, this is very Western, heretical?
No,
Or in the context
no,
of
there is something I talked about in my latest book, which is called ashakasha, which means ashakasha is an aberrant style. It's novelty, not innovation.
For its own sake.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, something that has no, there's nothing to it, it's like somebody comes in and puts his hat on his butt. He may have a few followers. You may say that's the way we do it on the moon, but it will take some time for that to catch on.
And such a thing wouldn't have ashe.
It wouldn't have ashe, and that's what you call ashakasha. That's what it is. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to comment. So, my friend.
Oh, fantastic.
I've heard this story in so many times.
Yeah.
And I know in the Afro-Wisdom website,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Like you say, realism is shit.
Yeah.
And this is a common phrase.
Yeah.
There's an entire genre in Brazilian music called
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In fact, there's an exhibition going on now at UCLA Fowler Museum, which is entirely on that show. Yeah.
And the music is characterized by being like light, easy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and now I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you very much for that. This is really.
So I want to round up the questions so we can move to the reception. We can have more conversation with Professor Abiodun, perhaps more formally, but let's thank him.